Hey, thanks for tuning in. I wanted to give everyone a little sneak peek about the American Mafia documentary series I've been working on. Like I said before, it's 11 episodes. Each episode is about a different crime family. I've been working on it since, last summer. And, now I got the trailer ready to go. I mean, all of it's ready to go. It's just in the promoting stages. So today I'm going to show you the trailer and I'm going to show you some clips from, from a few of the episodes. So, please enjoy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip and talk about it a little bit, and then just keep going from there. I got about maybe 7 or 8. All right, well, here we go. I'm going to play the trailer first. It's very twisted.
All like hush hush.
Not a glam.
This life is very twisted. You never know when it's your time to go. One day you're putting in work with someone, and the next day they're taking you out.
In our days, it was very quiet. Nobody ever talked about this. Nobody glamorized it. It was all like hush hush.
Not a glamorous life. And again, it's not what you see in Goodfellas. It's not what you see in Casino. Some days you were dead broke. Some days you had $2,000 in your pocket. It wasn't every day. You don't know anything else. You don't know what it is to go wake up 6 o'clock and go to work. Work? What the fuck is that? I wasn't going to work.
Even bosses get murdered in this life.
There was younger guys underneath him, and he wasn't doing the right thing, I guess. He was coming out of the card game, and unfortunately, a lone gunman came up and shot him 5 times.
People who knew me would tell you I like to use the bat a lot. If I had to shoot you, I'd shoot you too. I've done that.
This life requires many mixed personalities. You have to wear many hats in this life to try and survive.
You become 4 or 5 different people all at once. And you got to go home and be a dad and a husband. You got to go to work and do your job. You got to be out in the street and be a gangster.
Bonanno family is called Bonanno family because of my grandfather, Joe Bonanno.
That life there is gone. Today you have to be legitimate today.
Man, but you got to be an idiot to want to be a hooligan today. Jail time's now like 100 years for doing nothing.
Yeah, you'll be dead, in prison for life, or in the witness protection program.
I don't know anybody. Now, when Mafia turned their back on me, I know everybody.
There was the big flip of the Gambino underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano.
Here he is, signing autographs in a restaurant on Mulberry Street. It was supposed to be a secret organization.
He was a very, very, very violent guy. No question about it.
Albert Anastasia, he was a Brooklyn guy. He was probably the biggest killer in the history of the mob.
Michael Francis, his father, Sonny, was a really tough guy. But he really raised his son right.
If you want to see a gangster, that's Sonny Francis. And John Sr. don't compliment anybody.
This is a documentary series about the American Mafia. It includes 11 different crime families. Each episode is about a different one. The crime families include the Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Colombo, Lucchesi, the Gallo Crew, Chicago Outfit, the Philadelphia Mafia, the Patriarca, the Trafficante crime family, and the Jewish Mafia. Please subscribe to my channel to watch each episode as they come out. Well, what'd you guys think? I mean, I don't know. I put a lot of time into this, and this is my first time making something like this. So, every time I see that, like even with the trailers, it's like, damn, I really made that. To me, it's like, it's crazy. You know what I mean? Because I've never done something like that. But, as you can see, I had, within that trailer, I really give the perspective from, mobsters that were involved with that life. There's probably about, for sure, there's 10 plus, in this, and each episode about the different crime families includes someone from that life and in that crime family, whether they were a made man or an associate, so I really give the perspective on those. And, the only person that I couldn't get was for the Lucchesi crime family. I couldn't find anybody that was willing to come on and, share their story. But, with it's not just about the mobsters, what I mean? But the mobsters really are the attention grabbers, that were involved or associated with the life. I covered the history of the bosses for each crime family, how they made their money, wars or any hits that went on, so that's kind of what it is with that. And, like, okay, so for this next clip I'll play is, about Lucky Luciano and how he was, one of the first bosses of a crime family. And, here, I'll play it and I'll let you guys do with it. From Joe Masseria, Charles Lucky Luciano After the murder of Joe Masseria, Charles Lucky Luciano became the boss from 1931 to 1946.
Back in Sicily, my great-grandparents came from a town called La Carafridi, and there are two famous people that are from that town. The Sinatra family, Frank Sinatra's family, and another guy named Salvatore Lucania. And any mob people who know anything about the mob know that his name here in this country was Lucky Luciano. And my family knew the Lucanias. I could tell you they were abbracciante. They were people that worked with their arms. They were hardworking peasants. Lucky Luciano, his family were not bad people. I'm in touch with relatives of his when I go back to the town.
Lucky Luciano's crime family controlled lucrative crime rackets in New York City, such as illegal gambling, extortion, bookmaking, loan sharking, and drug trafficking. Lucky Luciano became very influential in the labor union activities and controlled the Manhattan waterfront, garbage hauling, construction, garment district businesses, and trucking. Everything was going smooth for 5 years, and in June 1936, Luciano was convicted on 62 counts of compulsory prostitution, and he was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in state prison. Lucky Luciano's underboss Vito Genovese ran the day-to-day operations.
That's where he allowed Vito Genovese to go ahead and take over his family, because he was never going to be able to come back to the United States.
Up until 1937, he was indicted for murder and he fled the country to Italy. So the crime family needed a new acting boss, and that boss would become Frank Costello. During World War II, after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government went to Lucky Luciano for help. The United States government feared submarine attacks, so the U.S. government needed the cooperation of all waterfront workers to prevent this. The government needed the mob's help to keep the New York docks free of strikes, sabotages, and any other problems that came up. Lucky Luciano still had control over all the waterfronts even while still in prison, so he agreed to help the government.
Help them so they help you. Lucky Luciano did it. When the war was on, he helped them with the war, and when they questioned him about it, he said, well, we're patriots. It's okay to be a patriot to help yourself, but if I did it, he'd kill me.
This put Lucky Luciano in position for him to bargain for his freedom. In return for all this, in 1946, instead of serving his sentence in prison, he was deported back to Italy. After Lucky Luciano's deportation, Frank Costello became the boss of the family.
Why did the Mafia get involved in Cuba?
Yeah, well, so what'd you think about that? I mean, it's, you can comment or say anything, that you think about it or give any input, but, Lucky Luciano, I suppose, in some kind of way helped the government, but, like Larry Mazza said, he was apparently a patriot or whatever, but, I think it's really interesting to cover the history, about them, because, right now, currently, there's certain guys that you can interview in the mob that were involved with the life, but, I really like to cover the history of it. So I was glad with this documentary, I was able to cover, like Lucky Luciano's history, Joe Colombo, Salvatore Maranzano, just guys that are obviously gone now, but, being able to, I really enjoyed being able to, do the research and cover each one of these guys' history as best as I could. So, I hope you enjoyed that clip. I'm going to play the next one. This is about Nikki Scarfo. Famous boss of the Philadelphia crime family was Nicodemo Scarfo, also known as Nikki Scarfo. He was the boss from 1981 up until 1991. He became the boss after the deaths of Angelo Bruno and Phil Testa. Nikki Scarfo was born in Brooklyn, New York on March 8, 1929. He graduated high school and tried to become a professional boxer. Nikki had a disadvantage though, because of his height, so he decided to put down the gloves and turn to crime. Nikki Scarfo would later become a member of Angelo Bruno's crew. On May 25, 1963, Nikki Scarfo got himself in trouble with the law after he killed a man. He was at a restaurant and had sat down at a table that someone else was using, but didn't know it was being used. A man would come up to Nikki and say, "Hey, this is my table, I just got up to say hi to someone." But that didn't matter because Nikki Scarfo picked up a knife and stabbed the man to death. When Nikki went to court, he claimed that it was for self-defense and he was only given 1 year in prison. Angelo Bruno, the boss of the Philadelphia crime family at the time, was very pissed off because they hated the attention. So when Nikki was released from prison, Angelo Bruno sent Nikki to Atlantic City to run the rackets as punishment. There wasn't much going on there. The money was in Philadelphia. Fast forwarding to 1970, both Angelo Bruno and Nikki Scarfo were charged with contempt of court and were sentenced to prison. Nikki Scarfo wanted to bond with Angelo Bruno during this time, but Angelo didn't want it. Angelo was released from prison and left Nikki Scarfo with 10 paper clips. This wasn't a good message. Angelo was telling Nikki that he was about as worthless as 10 paper clips. Atlantic City would go on to legalize gambling, so when Nikki Scarfo got out, he took the opportunity and made a construction business out there. The name of his business was Scarfo Inc., and he would make sure that the developers of the buildings realized that they had no choice but to use Scarfo Inc., because if they didn't, they would be killed. Nikki Scarfo would also go on to take over the Bartenders and Hotel Workers Union in Atlantic City. He would receive a fee to ensure that these workers wouldn't go on strike. He was getting anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000 a month from this. After the death of Angelo Bruno, Philip Testa became the boss and promoted Nikki Scarfo to consigliere. Philip always saw himself as a mentor to Nikki. When Nikki became the official boss of the crime family, he was known for being very violent. Anybody in the Philly area doing any crimes was to kick up money to Nikki. If they refused, Nikki would send his soldiers to kill him.
Nikki Scarfo is known as one of the bloodiest bosses. When Scarfo took over Philly, he talked to my dad the way Nikki Scarfo knows how to talk to people. He told him, Johnny, guess what? Your VIG just went up. And, my father, he ran to the cops. But my father also learned a valuable lesson. What happened? The cops said, that's nice. You're on your own. Because, believe me, the police have no problem letting criminals duke it out. They smile and they laugh as, okay, you're scared of Nikki? Well, sorry about that. Good luck to you, unless you want to come in and cooperate with us. It's a real ugly game, man. And it's not ugly just criminal to criminal. It's ugly criminal to cop and all the way around.
A man by the name of Michael Matthews needed money, and he went to Nikki Scarfo. Michael wanted to become mayor, and he promised to Nikki if he helped him win, he would give Nikki the city's planning and zoning to the mob. Michael did win, and Nikki became even more powerful. In 1982, Nikki was a convicted felon and was convicted for having a gun. He had to serve 2 years in prison for this. Salvatore Testa was the main capo running the family while Nikki was in prison. Salvatore was the son of Philip Testa. Also, in 1982, a faction inside the Philly mob known as the Riccabini brothers became one of the top people on Nikki Scarfo's enemy list. They did not want to kick up money to Nikki, because the old boss Angelo Bruno never made them do so, and because of this, a war had started within the family. Nikki's men had failed at killing one of the Riccabini brothers. In retaliation, the Riccabini brothers killed one of the first people in this war. His name was Frank Monti. He was the consigliere for Nikki Scarfo. After that murder, Nikki would continue to kill members of the Riccabini faction, and they would do the same back to Nikki for 2 years. The war... Yeah, another man that became a vicious boss, right there. He really, like I stated, in the beginning, he was, said self-defense, after he killed that person in the dining room, where he was eating and stuff over a table. And then, later he fast forward, he just really wanted money and power. I mean, if you weren't going to kick up to him, there's going to be heavy consequences. And, it started a whole all-out internal war with them, So, I mean, there was a lot of that in the Philly mob. So, if you like that little clip there, I mean, there's so much more other wars and different stuff that were going on, hits and bombings and everything else. I mean, it really got insane back then. It was a whole different time. It was just a really different era. You don't see that in the news no more. You know what I mean? I mean, it was just wild back then. There was no cameras, no surveillance and stuff like that, is like we got today. So I think, now they probably kind of smarten up and probably shouldn't do that. This next clip I'm going to play is another really interesting one. I never really heard about this kind of stuff in, mob history, but this guy's got an interesting story. Check it out. Very interesting story. His name is Peter Limone. He was the boss from 2009 up until 2016. Peter was born way back in 1934. He hooked up with the mobsters who ruled his neighborhood, showing much promise and quickly rising up the ranks, thanks to his mob mentor and family underboss, Enrico Tamilio. Peter's rise was put to a halt when himself, Enrico Tamilio, Joseph Salvati, and Louis Greco were charged with the 1965 murder of Edward Deegan. Prosecutors again based their their testimony on the government witness Joseph Barboza. After a trial, the 4 men were found guilty and sentenced to death, which would later be reduced to life in prison in 1970 when the state of Massachusetts abolished the death penalty. Unknown to the public, the judge, and the jurors, Joseph Barboza had lied. He knew who the real killer was, but decided to blame these 4 men because he had beef with them. To make things worse, the FBI knew that Joseph Barboza had lied. They knew that the 4 men were innocent and would spend the rest of their lives in prison. They also knew who the real murderers were, but the FBI agents Paul Rico and Dennis Condon didn't care. They wanted to take down the New England La Cosa Nostra family at all costs. Also, they wanted to protect their star witness Joseph Barboza so he could wreak more havoc on his former colleagues. Still, some men knew the truth, but it would take years for them to open their mouths. When the 1990s came around, Peter had spent over 2 decades behind bars. Enrico and Louis had already died. Only Peter and Joseph remained. In 1997, Boston hitman John Martirano told the FBI how Joseph Barboza had called him in 1967 while he was already in protective custody. He told John that he planned on framing Peter, Enrico, Joseph, and Louis for the Edward Deegan murder. John's testimony and a large investigation into the FBI's activities in Boston led to a discovery of documents that showed the FBI deliberately withheld evidence that the 4 men were innocent, then covered it up for decades. With this new evidence, the verdict against Peter and Joseph was overturned in 2001. After 33 years in prison, they were finally able to live in freedom. They also went a step further and filed a civil lawsuit and were rewarded a total sum of $101.7 million. $26 million went to Peter. You would think a newly released man from prison with all that money in his bank would take it easy and enjoy the rest of his life. But that's not what Peter had in mind. Peter probably thought to himself that he was bored and needed something to do, or he felt he earned it after doing 33 years in prison. But whatever the case was, he decided to go back to the Patriarch Crime family. By the year 2009, he became the boss of the Patriarch Crime family. The following year after he became the boss, he pleaded no contest to state charges of extortion, running illegal gambling operations, and loan sharking. He was placed on probation for 5 years. The judge must have thought Peter already served his time. The last 5 years Peter spent as boss, he was battling cancer and eventually lost. He died at age 83. Well, I thought that was a pretty interesting one. I've never heard of that in, the Mafia's history, some guy being wrongly convicted or, and then to go on and do 30 some years, come out and become boss. I was like, what you mean? That was just mind blowing, because, you would think, hey, let me step back. Let me, enjoy the rest of my time that I got here and, spend my money wisely and just relax, but instead that, he got involved and did that, but, sad situations, you spend so much time in prison, really probably mess with his mind and everything else like that. But, I don't know, this whole world is weird about stuff, so I don't know. I just really like to cover the history and, talk about, these situations, because hopefully, moving forward, we don't repeat these situations, but I don't know. I thought it was a pretty interesting one. If you thought it was too, comment. But like I said, if you want to get more of these, go ahead and subscribe. But I'm going to play the next clip. This next clip's a really short one, and yeah, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. Colombo created the Italian-American Civil Rights League. Later that year, the first Italian Unity Day rally was held in Columbus Circle to protest the federal prosecution of all Italians. On June 28, 1971, Colombo was shot 3 times by Jerome Johnson. He got shot in the head and neck, leaving him paralyzed, which he never recovered from. Jerome Johnson was immediately killed by Colombo's bodyguards. And after that, the Colombo War began. Well, with that, the Colombos, they were always at war and internally, definitely there was those 3 big Colombo wars, I cover them in the documentary. They had 2 wars with the Gallo crew. That was interesting. With the Gallo crew, I was like, I got to do a whole episode, dedicated to just them and how they started and why they wanted to do this fight, so I got, two guys that were in the life in that crew, to talk about their story and, gave a really good perspective on why they, went that direction and, pursued that route. But, the Colombos, they definitely had a lot of internal wars, so I don't know. I thought they were pretty interesting. They they were definitely known for a lot of internal war. But I'm going to play this next one now. The Salvatore Maranzano. Joe Bonanno would step up to the front of the line. Joe Bonanno became the boss in 1931. He had a very long career as the boss.
He started a bakery, but he had a bakery truck, and of course, they needed trucks when Prohibition hit. It all kind of came together, and he was in the right place at the right time. He was a really educated guy. A lot of those people weren't educated. He was a natural leader. He became the leader as a pretty young guy, and through his 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, he was the shit. The Bonanno family is called the Bonanno family because of my grandfather, Joe Bonanno. He was when the commission, after the Castellamarese Wars, and when the commission was coming together, my grandfather was the head of the family, and that's why it was the Bonanno family, and became one of the 5 of the commission. And the name has stuck through all these years.
Taking a step back, Joe Bonanno was already a part of this crime family before he became the boss. When he joined the crime family, Niccolo Schiro was the boss. So you can say Joe Bonanno started from the bottom and worked his way up to the top. Over the next 3 decades, Joe Bonanno would prosper from great success as this crime family's boss. The Bonanno crime family was one of the smaller crime families in New York, but this made it easier for the members of the crime family to be close and trust each other. They had almost no internal dissension and little harassment from other gangs or the police. The Bonanno crime family made a lot of profit off their illegal businesses, such as loan sharking, bookmaking, numbers running, prostitution, and other illegal activities.
The only time he went to jail was he went to Canada, and they arrested him for a passport thing once. And then they put him in court because he wouldn't answer questions about the commission. He put him in contempt for court. They asked him a few times. He said no. Brought him 6 months later, asked him again. He said no. Then after the 3rd time, the judge just said, man, send this guy home. He's not going to talk.
During the mid-1960s, the crime family started to slip, mainly due to Joe Bonanno's involvement with Joe Magliocco in trying to organize a hit on Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchesi. Well, another, interesting one. Joe Bonanno was really one of the OGs when it came to the, commission and everything back in the day. So I really thought it was important to cover him in the Bonanno episode. I mean, he was the boss for 30 plus years, like I said. And, I was really grateful to get his grandson on, Salvatore Bonanno. His father was Bill Bonanno as well, I don't know. I thought it was pretty interesting that I found him, and he only had one interview out at the time, and then after I did one with him, everyone else started doing it. So, I really appreciate and thank him for coming on, because it was pretty cool talking to someone that was, related to these guys, these heavy influential people inside the Bonanno crime family. It's not every day you talk to someone like that, but it was good. It was interesting, and I got a lot of good information out of it. This next clip I'm going to play is about the Lucchesi crime family. Takeover was Tommy Lucchesi. He was the boss from 1951 to 1967. He is definitely the most famous boss in the family. I mean, the family was named after him, and still to this day remains named after him.
He was arguably one of the most powerful ever.
He served as the Lucchesi crime family boss for 16 years, and even before becoming boss, he served under Tommy Gagliano for 22 years. That's a long time. Tommy Lucchesi was clever, and within his first year of being boss, he formed an alliance with the Luciano crime family underboss Vito Genovese and Anastasia crime family underboss Carlo Gambino, with the long-term goal of gaining control of the commission with the attacks on both Frank Costello and Albert Anastasia in 1957. He carried a great deal of respect from mobsters. He also had a hand in the political circuit with close relationships linked to mayors.
They made a name for themselves in the garment industry in New York, as well as being big-time hijackers, burglars, drug dealers, hitmen.
The Lucchesi crime family dominated Manhattan's garment district and related trucking industries by gaining control of key unions and trade associations. Tommy Lucchesi made his reputation as the preeminent garment district racketeer of his day, ruling over the lucrative textile trade with an iron fist, using the highly feared Murder Inc. enforcement crew for his muscle to place a vice grip on the industry. Carlo Gambino's oldest son, Thomas Gambino, married Tommy Lucchesi's daughter, Frances. This marriage brought Carlo and Tommy a step closer to each other and a step further in their goal of controlling major industries in New York. On July 13, 1967, Tommy Lucchesi ended up dying of a brain tumor, which meant it was time for a new boss to take control of this family. Another interesting one, the Lucchesi crime family, they were really quiet, kind of like the Chicago outfit. They were known for being silent but deadly, and I don't know, Tommy Lucchesi, there's not with a lot of these bosses, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of information as, John Gotti or the Gambino family. So, I had to really, look at this and, dive in and research these guys, but they let a good example for the other families, I'd say, on not having much internal wars and beefs and stuff like that. They kind of, they were more connected and strong in that way. I think they seen what was going on with the other families and, really kind of like, thought to themselves, hey, I don't want to, we shouldn't get out of hand like that or else we're going to have some issues. But, speaking of the Chicago outfit, I'm going to play this next clip about Al Capone from the Chicago outfit. The Chicago outfit was Alphonse Capone, also known as Al Capone. He was the boss from 1925 to 1931. At age 26, Al Capone would step up and lead the Chicago outfit into a new era. With political protection and law enforcement on their payroll, the organization flourished in illegal activities. However, it was Al Capone's violence that would really put the Chicago outfit on the map. Also, this helped increase revenues. During Prohibition, Al Capone had a tight hold on Chicago, and any establishments who refused to buy alcohol from him would be blown up. It is said that over 100 people were killed by these bombings. Al Capone never shied away from the public eye either, and was one of the first mob bosses to venture into the public media, while wearing custom-made suits, expensive jewelry, while smoking expensive cigars. When asked how he made his money, he would tell them, "I am just a businessman satisfying a demand." All of this attention made him a national celebrity. In 1931, he would open up a soup kitchen to an unemployed man just to show people that he was a good person. Al Capone and his soldiers made sure they voted in the right political leaders to keep their illegal businesses going, because they knew not everyone was corrupt and gonna let their crimes slide. Capone and his crew would go around with guns and scare people and tell them to vote for who they wanted. Some voters were beaten up, shot, or stabbed if they did not cooperate. The North and the South Side Chicago gangs had very high tension still, and it got so much worse with the shooting of mob boss Jaime Wise in 1926, and in 1929 with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was led by Al Capone. He rented an apartment across the street from rival gang boss Bugs Moran's headquarters. Al Capone set up a fake deal with Bugs, letting him know that there was a shipment of alcohol coming that was a great deal. Bugs agreed and they met the next day. When they met, Capone had the truck arrive that was carrying the alcohol. Then he had two of his men dress up like police officers and burst in during their deal. The fake police lined up 7 of Bugs Moran's men. They lined up the men against the wall as if they were going to search them. When given the signal, Capone's men shot and killed all of them. After this massacre, it made it very clear who Al Capone was. He became public enemy number 1. Al Capone's last few years on the street was constantly at battle with the courts. He would keep being charged and beat the case, and then another one would come and he would do a little time here and there. In the end, it wasn't a shot in the head that took Capone out, or an overthrow from the North Side gang. It was a tax invasion. From the month after the massacre, it all went downhill, and he was arrested by FBI agents to testify at a grand jury on violations of prohibition laws. He was also charged with contempt of court. Over the next few years, Al Capone would be in and out of the courtroom until 1932. At the young age of 33, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison. So, everyone knows Al Capone. Like I said, he was definitely one of the famous mobsters, inspired movies and everything else. I mean, he was one of the OGs from back in the day, and he led the example of, kind of like being like John Gotti. I mean, he was involved with the media, but this man, Al Capone, if you weren't doing business with him, they blow up your business, they'd kill you. You know what I mean? To set examples for everyone else to follow and, kick up to him. That's what he wanted. And they were very ruthless. They were very, very much killers and stuff. I mean, they didn't mess around. So, the Chicago outfit, like I said, it was really quiet. Not a lot of internal beefs, you know what I mean? There were some, you know what I mean, but there was nothing like an all-out war and stuff like that. I mean, you go to Chicago, there was only the only Mafia down there, the only crime family like that, but you go to New York, there was 5 of them, so Chicago didn't really have a lot of beefs within itself. So, they were definitely quiet, and Al Capone was just one boss that I covered in that crime family, the Chicago outfit. I mean, there was so many, there was so much. I mean, that was one of my longest episodes that I made, was because there was just so much to cover. But at the same time, it was so hard to find information like on them because they were so quiet about stuff. But let's see. I had another clip that I was going to play for you. If you guys like my brand, invest in yourself. I got a clothing brand that I do as well. And if you want to support me, you can check out my website. I'll put a link. I'll put the website link in the video description. But check out this new clothing ad that I made. I did a photo shoot and stuff last month, and this is what I came up with. Here again to wear something that's comfy. It's that time of year again to wear something that's comfy, warm, and stylish. Introducing our new Invest in Yourself Bold collection. This new collection of items features a hoodie, beanie, and sweats. The logo colors come in red and green. These new products are just perfect for this cold winter weather. These products hit all three of the check boxes: stylish, warm, and comfy. You can order all these products from our website. Our clothing brand link is in the video description. It is also on screen now. Yeah, so, with this documentary, I was able to, think about other ways on how to edit and, make my own videos. And so, I did that. I made my first clothing ad by myself. So, if you want to support me, like I said, I'll put a link in the description for that. But yeah, those were the clips that I was gonna cover. What I'll do, I'll play the trailer again one more time, and then I'll just, leave it at that. I appreciate you taking out time to watch this. I just figured it was only right to give you guys the preview, the trailer. I've been going on a lot of different shows, and they'll be coming out here soon, but I'm just doing the same thing, promoting. I want to make sure I can get a good promotion before I come out and start releasing them. What my plan is to release one a week. It'll go on for about 3 months, and then once a week for 3 months, and then they'll all be out there. So yeah, I just really want to make sure I got everything in position and make sure I got everything covered that I want to have out there, because I put a lot of time into this. I put a lot of effort, and I really enjoyed it, and I really like covering the history. That's what I really learned. I learned how to edit and do all that other cool stuff, but I really figured out that I really like covering history, and this was a good history subject. So thank you again for watching. I do appreciate it, and please continue to check out the brand. I got so many other things going on. I do a lot of the interviews. I do a lot of interviews with ex-gangsters and stuff. I just really like to hear a good redemption story. But thank you everyone again for watching. I'm gonna let the trailer play, and then after that, it's gonna end. Thanks again for watching. Life is very twisted. You never know when it's your time to go. One day you're putting in work with someone, and the next day they're taking you out.
In our days, it was very quiet. Nobody ever talked about this. Nobody glamorized it. It was all like hush hush.
Not a glamorous life. And again, it's not what you see in Goodfellas. It's not what you see in Casino. Some days you were dead broke. Some days you had $2,000 in your pocket. It wasn't every day. You don't know anything else. You don't know what it is to go wake up 6 o'clock and go to work. Work? What the fuck is that? I wasn't going to work.
Even bosses get murdered in this life.
There was younger guys underneath him, and he wasn't doing the right thing, I guess. He was coming out of the card game, and unfortunately, a lone gunman came up and shot him 5 times.
People who knew me would tell you I like to use the bat a lot. If I had to shoot you, I'd shoot you too. I've done that.
This life requires many mixed personalities. You have to wear many hats in this life to try and survive.
You become 4 or 5 different people all at once. And you got to go home and be a dad and a husband. You got to go to work and do your job. You got to be out in the street and be a gangster.
The Bonanno family is called the Bonanno family because of my grandfather, Joe Bonanno.
That life there is done. Today you have to be legitimate today.
But you got to be an idiot to want to be a hooligan today. Jail time's now like 100 years for doing nothing.
Yeah, you'll be dead, in prison for life, or in the witness protection program.
I don't know anybody. Now, when Mafia turned their back on me, I know everybody.
There was the big flip of the Gambino underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano.
Here he is signing autographs in a restaurant on Mulberry Street. And was supposed to be a secret organization.
He was a very, very, very violent guy. No question about it.
Albert Anastasia, he was a Brooklyn guy. He was probably the biggest killer in the history of the mob.
Michael Francis, his father, Sonny, was a really tough guy. but he really raised his son right.
So if you want to see a gangster, that's Sonny Francis. And John Sr. don't compliment anybody.
This is a documentary series about the American Mafia. It includes 11 different crime families. Each episode is about a different one. The crime families include the Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Colombo, Lucchesi, the Gallo Crew, Chicago Outfit, the Philadelphia Mafia, the Patriarca, the Trafficante crime family, and the Jewish Mafia. Please subscribe to my channel to watch each episode as they come out.